Hi, everybody. I'm Vladimir Duthier. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. For the next hour, you and I are going to spend some time talking about all the news that's breaking across the United States and anywhere else we have affiliates and correspondents. So let's begin. The Trump administration deports hundreds of migrants under an 18th century wartime law, despite a court order blocking it. We'll explain what the law is and the court battles that are already erupting over the move. Plus, a high-stakes conversation, what we're learning about tomorrow's expected call between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And a deadly storm system rips through the South and Midwest. We're surveying the damage left behind and where that system is headed next. This is CBS News 24/7. But we begin this morning with that new legal battle over President Trump's mass deportations. The administration removed several members of what they claim are a Venezuelan gang by evoking a law from 1798, even after a judge tried to block it. The president doubled down on the deportations from Air Force One yesterday. Take a listen to this.
They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war. In many respects, it's more dangerous than war because, you know, in war, they have uniforms. You know who you're shooting at. You know who you're going after. These are people that came out. They're walking our streets.
Meanwhile, the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, tweeted this: "Oopsie, too late." That's in response to a judge trying to block the deportation order over the weekend. He took to X with this tweet, which is reminiscent of what President Trump likes to do using social media. So let's get to CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro. He's got the latest from the White House. So, Aaron, we didn't set this up. Give the audience an understanding of exactly who the administration is saying these people are, what they did, and what comes next.
Vlad, good to be with you. Yeah, just to provide more context, Trump over the weekend announced the implementation of the Alien Enemies Act from 1798, last used by the United States in World War II to designate the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua as wartime criminals. And what this allows them to do is essentially remove them from the country without any due process or any asylum hearings. And the administration was on its way to doing that. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. this past Saturday put a 14-day block on the usage of that act and said that any deportees on flights already ongoing should be returned to the United States. The Department of Justice and the White House on Sunday, as well as today, have argued that the flight containing over 200 deportees, including 137 of these alleged gang members, was already over international waters and not subject to the federal judge ruling. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt wrote on X this morning that the order, quote, had no lawful basis and said a single judge, quote, cannot direct the movements of an aircraft carrier full of foreign alien terrorists. We also heard from White House border czar Tom Homan talking about these flights this morning. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Another flight every day. The teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us.
Homan's sound there already indicates, and from what we've seen from White House officials so far and from President Trump, that they are not backing down on these flights that they are sending and kind of setting up a potential constitutional challenge.
So, Aaron, just again for context, are any of these alleged gang members American citizens? Are any of these alleged gang members, have they been convicted of any crimes? Because we say that they are alleged gang members, but we have no context to provide or proof of that information, do we?
Right, and that's some of the questions we still have for the White House going into today. How did they designate these as gang members? Some reporting has shown that potential tattoos on these migrants is one sign. But again, this is all based off the White House's words. Still some questions left going into today.
Aaron Navarro reporting from the White House for us this morning. Aaron, thank you very much. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman is in Studio 55. She's an attorney as well as a journalist, so she's going to provide some important details and context for us. So how does this law work, Katrina, and how is it being used in this particular case?
Vlad, as you and Aaron were just talking about, this is a law that was evoked in 1798, and it's supposed to be used by the president when we're in a declared war or in circumstances where there's an invasion or predatory incursion by a foreign nation or government on the U.S. And then it then gives the president the authority to detain and deport citizens of that hostile nation. Now here, Trump has said that this gang, Tren de Aragua, is essentially equivalent to a foreign government, that they operate as one, that they have close ties to the Maduro regime. And using that, he's then saying he can use this law to deport these people from the United States. Anyone over the age of 14 who they say is a member of the Tren de Aragua gang.
All right. So now, again, context matters. If you are someone in this country, an American citizen, and you're looking at what is happening, you're saying, hey, I have no sympathy for gang members who commit heinous acts in this country. And if they're not American citizens, I'm okay with the president of the United States deporting them, because that's what he said he would do on the campaign trail. So the question becomes, what is the judge who tried to prevent this from happening saying?
I mean, he says, for one, that they cannot deport these people, that this needs to be more closely examined because, Vlad, the way this is being interpreted is so broad that people should realize it could have a much wider impact if Trump is able to apply the law in this way. You know, saying that a gang is a foreign government. Who else will he define as a foreign government? Or the Justice Department also argues this very low bar for what could be classified as an invasion. I believe it's just the arrival of people or things that aren't wanted. I mean, this could apply to any immigrant. So, you know, there's real dangers here for people outside of this group of Venezuelans. And as you and Aaron were talking about, we don't even really know if these are gang members. It's alleged that they are, but case history suggests there should be an allowance for judicial review to make sure that these really are enemy aliens affiliated with that group, if we can even say that they fall under the law at all.
So that's important. Those are important details, that the president and his administration can designate anybody that they don't like or that they disagree with in this capacity. So the question becomes, this judge tried to prevent it. It still happened. Is there any recourse now? I mean, you know, I'm just thinking back in days of yore, before the rise of Donald Trump and the unbalancing of the way things work in Washington, which, let's face it, some of his supporters welcome, there were people who would be held accountable for doing something that they shouldn't have done. If a judge, if you move these people out of the country and a judge said you couldn't do it, whoever made that decision, and I know the president ultimately, the buck stops there, but there are layers between the president and those decision makers. Somebody would be held accountable and have to stand tall before the man. So is that going to happen here?
I mean, this is the real question, Vlad. Could anyone be held in contempt for this? I mean, these people are already in El Salvador. It doesn't seem like it's possible to bring them back now, but what are the repercussions of this going to be? What the president's office is saying is that he is the authority here. He has the right to declare this. It's a political question, not up for judicial review. Obviously, the judicial branch says otherwise.
Really quickly before you go, the president tweeted something that I don't think I've ever seen before, which is that the pardons from President Biden are null and void. President of the United States, a pardon's a pardon. Am I right about that?
I haven't seen that, but my understanding is that a pardon is a pardon. Once it's done, I don't believe that can be reversed. I don't think there's any precedent for that I'm aware of, but I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, it's a thing that I think a lot of people are talking about this morning, because it doesn't really seem as if it's something that's doable, but you never know. Because as you just pointed out, this action with these alleged gang members happened even though the judicial system, which is the bulwark against illegal actions in this country or actions that are done without the approval of a judge, has been done anyway. So we'll have to see how it all breaks down.
With Trump, things are always unprecedented.
You got that right. Katrina, good way to end the segment. Thank you very much, as always. Appreciate it. All right, let's turn to weather now. A series of violent and deadly tornadoes killed at least 40 people across the U.S. this weekend. The storm system packed 80-mile-an-hour winds, leveled schools and homes. CBS News correspondent Nicole Valdez is live in Sipsey, Alabama. Nicole, what are you seeing? I mean, I can see behind you that the devastation is utterly heartbreaking for folks who've lost their homes and their businesses. What are they telling you?
Vlad, good morning. Look, it doesn't get any easier for the dozens of communities that are waking up to scenes like this. Sipsey, Alabama is just northwest of Birmingham, but you'll notice here some of the mobile homes are unrecognizable. This one in particular lifted off of its foundation and flipped. That's the floor that you see on top of really everything that was once inside of it. And now we're sitting here trying to make out what's left. I mean, you've got a washing machine right here with clothes still inside it. That gives you a bit of an idea that maybe the people who were here either left in a hurry, recognizing just how much danger they were in, or were still maybe caught by surprise when what looks like a twister came barreling through this community. This is just one area of Alabama where we've seen damage to this extent. We know at least 3 people died here. Governor Kay Ivey actually declared a disaster declaration. She put that in place before the storms hit because part of the state was under the highest risk of threat, a level 5 out of 5 from the National Weather Service. So there was some sort of warning really put out for people ahead of this, hoping that they would get out of homes like this, specifically those mobile homes that we unfortunately have seen time and time again end up just in ruin after a storm like this.
The president just posted about these storms on social media, Nicole. What could the federal response look like for these states?
Well, I think what will happen now is the state and the governor's office will get to the president's office and let them know what the need is. Right now, I think top of that list is getting the power back on. Of course, the state is working to do that here at this point, but they want to make sure that they know just how many people lost their homes and what it is they do need, whether that's shelter, whether that's food, whether that's money from FEMA to maybe work on rebuilding or finding temporary housing. So that will happen in the days to come.
All right, Nicole Valdez for us in Sipsey, Alabama. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. Let us bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the first look at the national forecast. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Vlad. Yeah, that storm has been so brutal over the past several days, from Friday all the way through today. We're still dealing with it. Now, the threat for severe weather has diminished, which is good news. But let's talk about what this storm has done over the past 72 hours. Take a look at all of these storm reports. Where you see these red icons, those are tornado reports. Where you see the blue icons, those are wind damage reports. 111 tornado reports. Now, that doesn't mean 111 confirmed tornadoes. Some were the same storm, but many, many reports of tornadoes. Over 2,000 wind damage reports, over 500 reports of large hail, and 72 reports of flash flooding from this storm. And again, it has been a brutal system, and it is still going now over the Northeast, where it is beginning to exit from New England. But there are flood watches in effect for parts of New England today. We'll talk more about that, plus our next coast-to-coast storm coming up. Vlad, back over to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. The new FBI director, Kash Patel, is reportedly moving ahead with significant changes to the agency, including its command structure. What Kash Patel is implementing and the impact on agents. I'm going to tell you about that next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. This morning, the Kremlin confirmed that Russian leader Vladimir Putin will speak on the phone with President Trump tomorrow. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams has more from Kyiv.
President Trump said last night that he believes there's a, quote, very good chance to end the war here in Ukraine. That follows a U.S. proposal for a 30-day ceasefire, already supported by Ukraine, and a visit last week by Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to Russia. In that planned phone call with Vladimir Putin on Tuesday, Trump said they would discuss land and power plants. Now, Russia is currently occupying around 20% of Ukraine's territory after Vladimir Putin launched a bloody invasion of this country 3 years ago. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been occupied by Russian forces since 2022, and fighting in that area has repeatedly raised fears of a nuclear disaster. Throughout this war, the U.S. has backed Ukraine, a young democracy, as it tries to hold off a Russian onslaught. It's thought Russia's invasion has caused hundreds of thousands of military casualties on both sides. And here in Ukraine, it's forced millions to flee their homes as Russian strikes have hit residential areas, hospitals, and the power grid. During the presidential campaign, Trump claimed he could end the war in 24 hours. That hasn't happened. But Trump has sometimes appeared frustrated with Ukraine in recent weeks, castigating the country's wartime president, Volodymyr Zelensky, at the White House and briefly suspending the delivery of American military aid. Back to you.
Holly, thank you very much. Wall Street is looking to rebound this week after the Dow posted its biggest one-week loss since 2023. Traders had a tough time last week adjusting to quickly changing tariff news, and yesterday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent discussed the state of the economy.
I can predict that we are putting in robust policies that will be durable, and could there be an adjustment? Because I tell you that this massive government spending that we'd had, that if that had kept going, we have to wean our country off of that. And on the other side, we are going to invigorate the private sector. I had a meeting with small bankers last week, and they are ready to start lending. Yeah. And I can tell you that Main Street is going to do well.
CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins me now here in Studio 55. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So how are the markets? I mean, they're up slightly this morning, but what are you hearing just from traders and on the ground as to how people are digesting this news from the secretary?
So, look, I think it's a little bit more of the same. We have heard that messaging even from the president that there could be short-term pain for long-term gain. I do think you have heard a lot of this, oh, he didn't rule out a recession. If you go back to the transcript, he said, look, no one could have predicted COVID. You can never 100% rule out a recession. And so you did see futures drop this morning, but I actually think what's happening right now is traders weren't completely spooked by his comments. It's more of the same, more uncertainty. But we actually got retail sales numbers that showed that spending increased. Now, that's sort of welcome news. It wasn't as good as expected, but that's compared to last month where they decreased. So I think that's what you're seeing in the market today, that the investors are saying, okay, maybe the consumer isn't falling off a cliff. There's still some growth, and we don't need to freak out just yet.
So what happens then on April 2nd when those reciprocal tariffs go into effect?
I would expect to see a lot more market volatility because over that last week, I mean, you saw we had aluminum and steel tariffs, the threat of reciprocal tariffs, and things were just all over the place. And I think you're going to see auto tariffs. You're going to see tariffs on nations like Vietnam and Brazil and India that tariff us already. And I think you're going to see a lot more volatility. I mean, the hope is that in a week and a half or so, maybe there's some negotiation, there's some carve-outs for some particularly important industries. But the president does say, you know, he is holding strong, and that's going to be his big plan. So, yeah, I think you'd see a bit more of a roller coaster.
The one thing that's sort of interesting to me is that I watched the MAGA faithful, the supporters of President Trump last week, trying to tell people that this kind of volatility in the stock market was a good thing. Now, I think if you are a trader, if you're an investor, and you are a sophisticated investor, or an institutional investor, and you see market volatility and you think it's a short-term thing because you believe fundamentals are sound, you certainly welcome a buying opportunity. But I think if you are a retiree who's depending on their 401k, and let's say this is the year that you're about to start withdrawing contributions from that 401k, and you see this volatility, it's not a good thing. And if it continues, you could see a dampening of that enthusiasm that you're seeing for retail sales, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're someone that is looking at their 401k and was expecting to retire this year, I feel for you because there is a lot of market volatility, and the messaging that you are getting from the White House and some investors is, hey, this is short term. We are going to see a bounce back. Don't look at your investments right now. And so that is a tough sort of push and pull. I think the hope from some investors that are more positive that I've spoken to is the back half of the year, once we get through this volatility of tariff today, no tariff today, that there's a little bit more stability. But again, I mean, right now, this whole wait and see thing, it gives people a lot of anxiety.
All right, Kelly O'Grady, not wearing green because we are in a green studio, even the O'Grady aspect of your lineage makes
green
me
in here.
I love it. Always good to have you here, Kelly. Thank you very much. All right, Kash Patel is making his mark as the FBI's newest director by pushing for a shakeup. Patel is attempting to decentralize the Bureau's command structure while also dividing the agency into 3 regions. I want to bring in CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen to talk about this. So, Jake, could the command shake up? What is it going to look like? How would dividing the agency in these regions impact operations? And what are these regions that he wants to divide them into?
Well, the way that this command structure was put in place before Kash Patel took over was after 9/11. The former head of the FBI, Robert Mueller, made it so that 52 field directors all report to the deputy director of the FBI, who now is Dan Bongino. What this new directive from Kash Patel did, this email came out Friday, and as was reported by news outlets including CBS, was that it breaks the regions of the FBI reporting structure into 3, Central, East, and West, so that agents and the top agents and all the field offices around the country country report to basically a lead in those 3 agents, and then they go up the chain. Now, this kind of adds another wrinkle to the way that the FBI does business. The purpose of this, the original structure was done after 9/11 was because there were lapses in intelligence, lapses in communication, and basically by centralizing the structure out of Washington, D.C., that's something that they wanted to do to make sure that information was getting to bosses as fast as it needed to go. Now, Kash Patel has been a large critic of that, basically saying that the intelligence wing of the FBI is a sham and not purposeful for what he sees as going forward, the purpose of the FBI, but also he wants to decentralize the FBI to be part and back out into the field. He has reassigned agents from Washington, D.C. to other parts of the country, and basically this serves that purpose, right, to make it more of a regional structure where if you are an agent in Northern California, you are reporting to someone else in California or on the West Coast, not necessarily to someone in Washington.
All right, Jake, I want to pivot to something that I asked attorney and reporter Katrina Kaufman earlier, this posting on Truth Social from President Trump where he says former President Biden's pardons for the January 6th committee are void or vacant, and says they are now subject to investigation. How does this work, and what are you hearing about what people are saying, members of Congress? Because the danger and the worry, of course, is that any president could undo pardons of a former president if this sets a precedent. So what are you hearing?
Right, and these pardons are sweeping, they're broad, and they're permanent. And so to undo that, and this really started on the fringe parts of the internet in kind of that MAGA, internet circle, and now has really made its way to the president's mouthpiece on Truth Social, where he's called these pardons void. Now, the auto pen issue that Donald Trump points to is basically, a generic thing that any person would do on maybe DocuSign or one of those platforms where you basically click on your name and it signs the document for you in a legal way. Trump is alleging that that's illegal. This has been played out back when President Obama signed the Patriot Act. He used an auto sign to sign that, and a number of lawmakers back then said that that law was null and void because he automatically signed it. You have to imagine that with the number of executive orders that Donald Trump has signed, a lot of those were done potentially with basically this auto pen way. This is not legal. We will see if the Trump administration brings a legal challenge, which I think is the one thing to look out for, Vlad. But as of right now, this is just, kind of internet fodder that has made its way to now the president claiming that pardons signed by his predecessor were illegitimate when presidents have done this for years, and many things that presidents do when you're signing dozens and hundreds potentially of documents a day are not all signed with an actual paper and pen and scanned into the government record.
Jake Rosen breaking it down for us. Jake, thank you very much. The Pentagon says it will continue attacking targets in Yemen until Houthi rebels stop attacking shipping in the Middle East. We're following the fast-moving developments next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you this morning. There are new details about the investigation into a missing college student. Sudiksha Konaki disappeared in the Dominican Republic 11 days ago. Investigators say 22-year-old Josh Ribby was the last person seen with her. He told police he and Konaki were hit by a wave and struggled to get out of the water, but he is not 100% certain if she made it out. Ribby's attorney says his passport has been confiscated and he's confined to the hotel, but officials emphasize he's not a suspect. An investigation is underway into a deadly fire that tore through a nightclub in North Macedonia. The fire Sunday morning at the Club Pulse killed at least 59 people and injured more than 150 others. Officials say people were trampled in the chaos as they tried to escape through the building's single exit. The country's interior minister believes pyrotechnics are likely to blame. Police have reportedly detained 15 people in connection with the fire. And the Vatican has released the first photo of Pope Francis since he was admitted to the hospital more than a month ago. The picture shows the 88-year-old pontiff sitting in a wheelchair in the hospital chapel. He's in front of an altar, and officials say he was participating in Mass with other priests. The Pope was admitted to the hospital on February 14th with bronchitis, which later developed into double pneumonia. Doctors say his condition has improved and he's no longer in critical condition. The U.S. and Houthi rebels in Yemen are vowing to escalate attacks after the United States launched airstrikes targeting the Iranian-backed group over the weekend. Houthi officials say the strikes killed more than 50 people. The Iran-backed group vowed to resume attacks on Israeli ships last week after Israel cut off aid entering Gaza.
This is an effort to deny them the ability to continue to constrict and control shipping And it's just not going to happen. We're not going to have these guys, these people with weapons able to tell us where our ships can go, where the ships of all the world can go, by the way. It's not just the U.S. We're doing the world a favor. Yeah. We're doing the entire world a favor by getting rid of these guys and their ability to strike global shipping.
For more on this, I'm joined by CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio from Tel Aviv. So, Ramy, what can you tell us about these strikes, first of all?
Hey, yeah, Vlad, good to see you. For starters, here in Israel, this country right now is on high alert for missiles coming in from Yemen. The Houthis are claiming that they targeted the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier strike group twice in 24 hours. And in the first attack, they said that they launched 18 missiles and 1 drone. However many they fired, though, it appears that they were all either intercepted or at least didn't find a target. Hours after that, the Houthis then said that they launched a second attack with more missiles and more drones. A Houthi spokesperson this morning said that that was in retaliation for Washington's attacks. And, you know, that if we draw a line to the ceasefire talks, it for now doesn't appear that this is having an impact. Last night, the office of Prime Minister Netanyahu said that negotiators had been sent to Egypt to meet senior Egyptian officials. They've since come back, and one official says that they're ready to go back out again if told to.
All right. Last week, I spoke to you about this report by the Associated Press that the U.S. and Israel had contacted officials in East Africa about relocating Gazans. Any developments on that end, Ramy?
Sorry, I've lost communication if anyone's talking to me.
Ramy, can you hear me? All right, folks, a little technical difficulty, which happens whenever you're reporting from the field. Ramy Inocencio, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it. Let's get straight to CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata, who's joining me live from the Pentagon. Charlie, you've been there before. You know how that goes. But let me ask you about these strikes and these targets, which are Houthi rebels that have been happening for more than a year. Is the strategy working?
Well, Vlad, you know, I've put that question time and again to U.S. officials, defense officials, people from CENTCOM, because the firepower is there. You know, it's obvious. You've got the USS Harry S. Truman. That's a strike carrier group. You've got a carrier strike group, a number of destroyers in that neighborhood, in that region, specifically in order to keep those shipping channels open. But what we have seen in the past year or so, is a sort of tit for tat. So the Houthis will go after a cargo ship, might even try to take a punch at a U.S. military vessel, and then the United States will return fire. It's interesting to note, back in October, you remember, because we talked about this, we reported this, the United States sent B-2 bombers there. You know, these are the big aircraft in terms of their payload, what they can strike. And they were specifically sent there to hit deep underground facilities and bunkers. This was also a message, and they said so at the time, to regional enemies. Not quite calling out Iran, but saying, look, we've got the firepower and we can attack and hit wherever we want to go and as deep as they want to be buried. Now, in terms of the strategy, we might see, what we're seeing now is an escalation. And Defense Secretary Hegseth said yesterday there will be an unrelenting attack on the Houthis. We've been given a sort of indication that this might just be the first salvo of what might be an extended campaign. So it might turn the tide now. But in the past, there's been a sort of tit-for-tat fight between the Houthis and the United States and Israel, for that matter. Israel's also attacked the Houthis in Yemen. But now the messaging that we're getting now is this might be scaled up.
And what role does Iran play in all of this, and how might it affect the tension between Israel and Hamas?
Yeah, well, you know, Iranian officials just yesterday, or over the weekend anyway, denied that they had anything to do with the Houthis, which is an absurdity. There's plenty of intelligence to show that. Certainly CENTCOM will tell you that Iran has been providing Houthis with intelligence, weaponry, to enable them to attack U.S. vessels, or at least attempt to attack U.S. vessels, and some of their long-range weapons that have tried to get into Israeli airspace before they were intercepted. So Iran is absolutely behind the Houthis, and there's plenty of evidence to show it. Now, what this will mean in regional terms, remember, Iran is kind of on its knees, right? It was only a few months ago that its chief partner in the area, Hezbollah, was pretty much decimated. And importantly, Israel then went after Iran's air defense system. So in a manner of speaking, they're a sitting duck. As one Israeli officer explained it to me, it said it's like playing soccer or football with an open goal when we're against Iran. So by going hard against the Houthis, will this disrupt or perhaps change the region? It always does, because Iran has cards to play. Whether or not this Trump administration cares or worries about what taking out the Houthis would do, or having a massive impact in Yemen itself, or, if they would expect, Iranian retaliation, well, that remains to be seen.
All right, Charlie Daggett for us at the Pentagon. Charlie, my friend, thank you very much.
Thanks, lad.
Well, now that the government shutdown has been averted, Congress will turn to other legislative priorities. At least that's what we hope. But Senator Chuck Schumer's sudden change of position on the budget seems to have left Democrats without a clear direction. I want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin, recent polling that you've seen over the last couple of days suggests that the Democrats are really underwater here. We talked about this last week. What kind of power are the Democrats going to be able to exercise between now and, let's say, the midterms?
Hey, Vlad, good to see you. Well, you're right. They actually don't have a lot of legislative power at this point because they're in the minority in the House and the Senate. Even though the Republican margins are very slim, Democrats still don't have as much leverage as they would like. And they're trying to exert it in ways where they can. And there was a section of Democrats that thought the funding fight that we saw last week was the position to do that, was the opportunity to do that. Schumer made the calculation that it wasn't worth shutting down the government to be able to hold the line here, because he was looking at history and saw that parties that worked to shut down the government didn't really gain anything from it. In fact, the political blowback was significant. And so he made that calculation. But we're already seeing, Vlad, that he's getting a lot of pushback from his own party. Last week, we were talking about House Democrats criticizing him very intensely over this decision. And on Friday, we saw Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader on the House side, Schumer's New York colleague and his counterpart on the House side, not saying whether he would have confidence in Schumer's leadership abilities. He was asked multiple times at a press conference, you see there on your screen, whether he had confidence in Schumer, and he wouldn't answer the question. Now, we're just getting some news here, Vlad, that's really important, that Schumer has a book coming out this week. He was supposed to be starting a book tour and doing book signings, and I just heard from his publisher that they are postponing those signings because of security concerns. So what has changed is the idea that he's getting a lot of pushback and a lot of vitriol from those in his own party, and this according to this latest postponement, is starting to have an effect on him personally.
I also have noted, Caitlin, that folks who are fairly vocal about leadership within the party are being asked, would they support, for example, Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries in leadership roles when that time comes? And you're getting a lot of dodging of the questions. People saying, as Jasmine Crockett did, well, she doesn't believe elections are going to happen. And I mean, I find it interesting that there are people who are complaining about where Democrats are right now, but who aren't willing to say, at least unless you've heard differently, that they would make a change so that they can ensure that the things that they want to get done are being done.
That's right. You're seeing a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of, expressing this. But how does it actually get implemented? I mean, that remains an open question. Chuck Schumer isn't up for re-election until 2028. Will voters remember this shutdown by then, or this shutdown showdown, I should say, by then? Who knows? But the idea is that Democrats are starting to go after each other. And Vlad, it really reminds me of how Republicans have been over the past decade and a half or so. You had a lot of anger within the Republican Party at Republican Party leadership. I mean, that helped to kind of foment the support behind Donald Trump all those years ago, someone who would come in and break up the system, even Republican systems. Democrats we're starting to see a similar thread there, where you're seeing kind of the base of the party express real frustrations about how it is being led. So what does that lead to remains to be seen. We're certainly keeping an eye on some of these town halls that we've been seeing for Republicans, but also for Democrats as well.
Yeah. All right. Caitlin Huey-Burns reporting from Washington for us this morning. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you.
The Trump administration's funding cuts are impacting the National Institutes of Health as well as Johns Hopkins University. Now there are concerns about the future of vaccine research. CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder joined CBS News 24/7 this morning to discuss the potential impacts.
We've seen this backlash against mRNA vaccines. We are hearing that there are going to be terminations of all grants at NIH related to mRNA vaccines, and that needs to be confirmed. But that is what we're hearing now. And this is unfortunate because mRNA vaccines are used not just for infectious diseases, but we're seeing applications now for cancer, for autoimmune disease, for heart failure, for genetic diseases. And so this is a really important new tool that's very promising that's being taken off the table.
Dr. Gounder also said these cuts to medical and scientific research could be just the beginning. Many experts fear will set medical innovation back for decades. Well, this morning, firefighters in Texas are battling a large wildfire known as the Crabapple Fire. It broke out over the weekend just west of Austin. So far, it's burned 9,500 acres. Crews say the fire is more than half contained, but it will take several days to get it fully under control. One official says high winds are to blame for the quick spread of the flames. No injuries have been reported. Let's bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with another look at the national forecast. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Vlad. Yeah, there is high fire danger all across portions of the Southwest from Texas into the Four Corners region. On the other side of the coin, we've got heavy rain and flood watches for portions of the Northeast. Let's take a look at our current radar. Actually, the past 3 hours, this is the same front that brought the devastating and deadly tornadoes to parts of the Mississippi Valley and the Deep South, certainly over the weekend. It has weakened and most of the heavy rain has moved off the coast, but we do still have flood watches in effect. Let's take you up to the New England area where we have flood watches and warnings in effect for portions of Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine as well. This morning, you can see where those flood watches are. Flood alerts through the morning as more than 3.5 inches of rain fell even here near the Philadelphia area, and the rain continues to fall this morning. Taking you through the next system, it's coming onshore in California today, and this is going to be another coast-to-coast event. It does not look like it's going to have quite the power as far as severe weather that the last one had, but take a look. As this moves out into the Central Plains, it's going to be a full-on snowstorm, and then a cold front will move into the Northeast just in time for the first day of spring to bring showers and eventually a cool down. We already have winter weather alerts associated with this system. In fact, we have winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings all throughout the Rockies. You can see Colorado, right up into portions of Wyoming, and we have a winter storm watch that has already been issued for portions of Kansas, Nebraska, right up into Iowa and Minnesota. So winter not over yet, despite the fact that spring officially begins on Thursday. And you know what? It is severe weather season. This is a 7-day outlook, an early heads up from the National Weather Service that by this coming weekend, we could have yet another round of severe weather in some of the same spots that got hit hard this past weekend, Vlad. I'll send it back over to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. Today, of course, is St. Patrick's Day. Coming up, we'll bring you the sounds and sights of the iconic holiday. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Last month, the head of NORAD and NORTHCOM, the military commands that defend North America, told Congress some of those mysterious drones seen flying inside the United States may have indeed been spying. But he did not say for whom. 60 Minutes correspondent Bill Whitaker has more.
Close around 7 o'clock, I would say, I started seeing these reddish-orange flashing lights that were starting to come in from the Virginia Beach area. It began slowly, like one at a time.
Jonathan Butner's close encounter with drones came on December 14th, 2023. He was at his family's cabin on the James River in Virginia, about 100 miles south of Washington, D.C., with a commanding view of several military installations across the water.
They started really coming in, like almost like on a conveyor belt.
How many in total?
Well, I probably saw upwards of 40 plus. When I first saw that, I was like, those are going directly over Langley Air Force Base.
Langley is one of the most critical air bases on the East Coast. home to dozens of F-22 Raptors, the most advanced stealth fighter jets ever built. Butner says from his perch, he has seen it all.
I'm very familiar with all the different types of military craft. We have Black Hawks, we have the F-22s, and these were like nothing I've ever seen.
Butner took these iPhone videos of the objects coming and going for nearly an hour and a half. These are the only public videos of the drones over Langley.
Here's another one. From each other, yes.
He shared this video with the FBI for its investigation.
And another.
Yes.
The reports were coming in 20 to 30 sightings, same time every evening, 30 to 45 minutes after sunset.
Retired four-star General Mark Kelly was the highest-ranking officer at Langley to witness the swarm. A veteran fighter pilot, Kelly went up to the roof of a squadron headquarters for an unobstructed view of the airborne invaders.
So what'd you see?
Well, what you saw was different sizes of incursions of aircraft. You saw different altitudes, different airspeeds. Some were rather loud, some weren't near as loud.
What was the smallest one? What was the largest one?
The smallest, you're talking about a commercial size quadcopter, and then the largest ones are probably size what I would call a bass boat or a small car.
The size of a small car.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, General Glenn Van Herk was Joint Commander of NORAD and NORTHCOM, the military commands that protect North American airspace. He has since retired.
I actually provided support in the form of fighters, airborne warning and control platforms, helicopters, to try to further categorize what those drones were at the time.
Coming up, one more look at your forecast as a major storm makes its way across the Northeast. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. You can't celebrate St. Patrick's Day without a little Irish green. Well, maybe you can. But the sounds of a traditional Irish music. Many Irish bars across the country host traditional folk music sessions when anyone can join in the music. Bradley Blackburn has more.
At Paddy Riley's Music Bar in New York City, the sounds and sights of Irish music boom, not just on St. Patrick's Day, but year-round. And at least once a week at a session, anyone who wants can play or dance.
The idea is that we welcome all musicians to come in. If you're really good, we'll ask you to do a solo. If you're not that good, we'll keep you well away from microphone, but we won't discourage you.
Niall O'Leary performs and helps organize the session.
In Irish, it should be session. It's a very similar word.
One of dozens that happen weekly across New York. He's an architect and dance instructor who was raised in Ireland with music.
You'd increase your repertoire of tunes by just going to sessions and sitting in the back and playing along.
Some say sessions have their roots in Ireland's kitchens, back when neighbors would get together to play folk music. After World War II, the idea caught on in bars and pubs.
It spread through the years and across the globe.
I met with Captain Farrell and...
But Erica Martinez discovered it just around the corner. She lives near this bar, enjoyed the sessions, and was swept up, deciding to learn Irish dancing and join in.
One day I showed up, and I've been coming ever since.
For bar owner Desmond Murray, it's a business boost and a tradition that brings people together.
A lot of regulars, a lot of tourists. It's great to see people coming from all over, because you never know who you could meet.
On St. Patrick's Day, they say everyone's Irish.
We just do it because we love it.
And at a session, everyone is welcome. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the last look at the national forecast. Kate, fun fact. Host and anchor of CBS News' Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan, used to be a world-ranked Irish dancer.
That is incredible.
She hates when I bring it up, but I do it every time I can.
They don't use their arms. It's amazing because it's such a skill. I went out and I met with some Irish dancers. We had our big parade here in Philadelphia yesterday, and what they do is incredible. So shout out to Margaret Brennan. Let's talk about what's happening outside today. It's looking a little festive. We've got some green out there, this on the radar, but it is moving on out. We are still seeing heavy rain, but this storm that produced violent weather across much of the nation this past weekend is finally getting out of here. We do have some flood alerts across portions of the Northeast. Another system also coming on shore in California today, but otherwise it's a bit of a quieter day across the nation. Vlad, back over to you.
Could use a little bit of quiet. Kate Bilo for us. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are after the break. Mugo Diwe is live from San Francisco. This is